Hey, what's happening? I'm back with some more bends. In my last video, I went into a great amount of detail on how to play bends, different types of bends, and what to do with those bends. So if you're unsure about anything about bends, like the fundamentals, go back and watch that video. Today's lesson is gonna be a short video that's just gonna expand on some of those licks. So I'm gonna give you a bunch of bend licks, and we're gonna focus on a couple of the trickier types of bends. All right? So in that last video, we tackled this tricky concept of double stop bends and triple stop bends. So double stops are just when you play two strings at once with at least one of the strings bending. So here's a very common double stop bend, and this would be coming out of like A minor pentatonic. Okay, or maybe C major pentatonic, depending on how you're thinking about it. And then I'm taking the 7th fret, the note D on my 3rd string, bending it a whole step, full bend, and then I'm playing G on the 2nd string. Very common thing is to turn that into a triple stop by barring the pinky finger. Another very common double stop is this one. So in that same A minor pentatonic, I am on the 8th fret of the 2nd string, that note's G. I'm gonna whole step bend, full bend up to A. Then I'm gonna use my pinky underneath on the 1st string 8th fret and play C. There are situations where we bend two strings at once. So you could take that 7th and 8th fret double stop I did again. You can bend both strings. In order to do that, I'm not really reinforcing the pinky finger, but I'm kind of trying to get my 1st finger to like bar down slightly to support the pinky. So, okay, so I bent two strings there, right? You can also do the same thing down here. I like to use actually 2 fingers here again. You could try 1. So that was a bar, right? That barred double stop bend is common also here on the 2nd and 3rd string. Now when you do those double stops and triple stops, you don't necessarily have to hit them all at once. What we're implying here though is that you're holding another string with a different finger than the one you're bending. And a very specific kind of double stop bend is the unison bend. This is a double stop where I take a note, bend it up to a pitch. In this case I'm bending D to E. Then I'm playing that same pitch on the lower string, E on the 2nd string. Then you can also do it between the 2nd and 1st string. So I took G, 8th fret, and bent it up to A. Some people like to use their pinky on that one. Then sometimes we triple stop on the unison bend. So if I triple stop, I'm going to actually end up playing a note that's not unison. So I'm going to kind of do that unison bend I did between the 2nd and 3rd strings again. Then I'm going to play the 1st string. So that's A. So I'm playing E, E, A. Which is a nice segue to our first lick. We're going to call it the Chuck lick. See if you can guess who I'm naming this lick after. So the Chuck lick has 2 variations. The first variation is 1 string at a time. The second variation would be hitting the 3rd string and then hitting the 2nd and 1st strings together. And then you hit them twice, like this. Very common old style like rock and roll lick that has been used for almost a century now, which is pretty crazy when you think about it. So another thing about that lick is I let all the notes ring out when I played those 2 variations, right? I went, all the notes are ringing there. You can play it a little more staccato, which is what Chuck Berry would have done. So, or, okay, so you can separate the notes or play them all and let them ring out. I have more licks that are going to use unison bends, but I want to talk about another technique first, and then we'll combine them all together. So from the last lesson, we also discussed the bend, release, pull. We like to call it the BRP. Okay, the bend, release, pull is this. So I take a string, play it, bend it, release it, and then pull off. So when we release strings, we want to do it in a controlled manner. We can do it quickly or slowly, like, or. Now both ways on those releases, I did the same technique. So I'm not letting go of the pressure on the string. I'm still pushing in on the string, and I'm just letting go a little bit of the upward push on the string. So I'm just kind of letting the finger come back to equilibrium, but I'm doing it in a controlled way. The best analogy I have of this is you imagine someone like bench pressing. You don't want to like just let the bar come down and smash your chest when you're bench pressing. You want to ease it down, okay? Even when you're going fast. So here's just a few BRP variations. This is one on the third string. You can do the same thing on the second string. You can also pre-bend the BRP, meaning you start with the string already bent or simultaneously bend as you pick, like versus, and then versus. Okay? Then you're gonna wanna add notes to that. So usually the first note I'm gonna add is the next note down the scale. So if I'm in A minor pentatonic, right? So I'm going 4th string, 7th fret. If I do that on the second string, the next step after that is to tap or hammer from nowhere that left hand, right? So I'm like hammering on, but I'm not hammering on from anywhere. I'm just tapping the left finger down. So, or gives you a little bit more legato sound when you do that. The last BRP that I will show you is the hardest one. It requires a double stop. So I'm barring the 7th fret, 3rd and 2nd string, reinforcing, kind of barring these fingers to reinforce, and then, okay, so our first BRP lick is going to be probably the easiest one, and it's very simply just going to be using the A blues scale, kind of going up and then down the scale. All right, so check it out. The next two BRP licks are going to require us to hold the bend a little longer and then quickly release it. So the rhythm on this one is tougher. So make sure you're playing slow and controlled. So the third BRP lick is very similar, except I'm going to do the lick on the 2nd string. So the bend is on the 2nd string, and I'm going to bend it 1.5 steps. So I'm going to bend A, 10th fret, up to C on the 2nd string. All right, so this next lick is very fun. It requires a grand bend. And then that was really out of tune, but I showed you what we're gonna do. We're gonna pick as we release the string, and then when we get the string back to the original note, we're gonna do the pull off, okay? And this is a cool lick to do over a D7 chord. This is essentially like a crazy D7 arpeggio. So check this out. All right, BRP lick number 5. And then the last BRP lick that I have written for y'all, this one requires another double stop. Here you go. A little faster. All right, the next several licks I'm gonna give you are all paying homage to guitar players that made certain bend licks famous. All right, so the first lick up is the Angus lick. All right, so I started out with just the bend. I kind of did a little unison bend there. But let go of the bend, right? And then he does the little legato lick. There's the double stop, and then he does this little cool bend, release, pull out of it. Back to that same double stop bend, right? So you may know what song that's from or what guitar solo that's from. And if you do, just know that I'm not playing exactly what he plays on that. Okay, I modified some things to make it a little easier to play and also to avoid any litigation. All right, so the next one I'm pretty sure I did in my last video, but maybe you didn't watch that video, so then it's new for you. This is the Eddie lick. All right, so that one requires the Chuck Berry lick. And then I did a bend, release, pull. And then bend, release, bend. Ooh, that's another one, the BRB. All right, the next one is the Jimi lick. A lot of guys named Jimmy, right? I think you'll know this one though. So what did we do on that one? We just did simple little bend there. Took an arpeggio with the bend at the end. And then, so I did a half bend and then released it. And then, double stop bend. All right, this one is the Lenny lick. I know I'm a dork for coming up with these names. Here it is. All right, so that Lenny lick, we did bend, release, pull. And then I did this middle finger over thing in the pentatonic box. So, it's a nice technique to have down. I just modulated up 3 frets, up a minor third, another minor third. Okay. If you don't know that song, then you were born after 1993. Next up are 2 licks from a very famous guitar solo, or that I modeled after a very famous guitar solo. So see if you can spot it. This is the Donnie lick. Yeah, hopefully you know that one. That lick required a couple hard things, right? This big slide and a 1.5-step bend. And he doesn't really do a bend, release, pull. He does a bend, release, and then pick. And then he does this quick bend without a release. I don't even think he actually does that in the song, but I wanted to add that in because it's cool and it's hard. It's good to practice the fast bend. And then a little first finger bend to get that half step. And the harmonic minor. So this next lick comes from one of my favorite guitar players of all time. Perhaps like someone who's influenced my sound more than anyone. I try to really emulate this guitar player a lot because of how smooth he plays and his style and tone. So yeah, here is the Joe lick. so grand bend, little smear, unison bend, and then slide up. All right, so that's it. I hope you find those bend licks useful and they help your playing. So my next lesson, we will deal with something else other than bends. But if you want to find out what we're going to talk about in that lesson, go ahead and hit subscribe. You can like the video. You can share it with friends, family, or anyone that you might know randomly on the internet. But yeah, with that said, I wish you all the best. And yeah, have a great day. Adios.